Hey now, Meat Fest begins. It is salami day. Today we're going to be making an elk, bourbon, and cherry salami. We've got some elk meat that my very generous father-in-law donated to us after his last hunt. We've got some pork butt, we've got some bourbon, we've got some dried cherries, all kinds of things. This is going to be a fun experiment, so come along for the ride.
Can't wait.
Yeah! Woo! So the first step here is just to take this elk, it's not even really a roast, I guess this piece here is. These ones are little offcuts here. I'm just going to go through it and try to clean off any silver skin or connective tissue or anything like that, that even with the grinding that it's going to get here, it's just going to probably carry through to the finished product anyway, and it's not something that I want influencing the texture, just because it won't break down otherwise. So I'm just going to clean this up as much as I can. I might miss a little bit here and there, but that's okay, as long as I'm reducing it. All right, so I have our elk all prepped up here. I also actually cut it into little strips so that it'll be ready to go for the grinder. With that, we wound up getting just over 2,300 grams. So now we're going to get a comparable weight here with our pork shoulder. So we've got some boneless pork butt here that we picked up. This is going to be a 50-50 ratio of the pork to this meat. We've got this here. Now, I'm not actually adding any extra fat to this recipe. We're shooting for sort of a leaner salami. Also, this pork butt has a really nice fat to meat ratio on it. If a person was wanting to increase the fat in a recipe like this, you could absolutely go ahead, maybe add an extra 10 or 15% fat based on the total weight. Of course, if you're going to go do that, then you do want to take that into consideration when you're calculating the weight of your cure and your salt. All right, so we took our meat, we actually fired it into the freezer for about half an hour just to let it get a little bit colder, even though it was already quite cold to start off with. We're going to just use the coarse plate on the grinder here, and we're going to run it through. All right, so grind number one is done, and I was actually just alternating the pork and the elk throughout this. Now, while we have the grinder out here, we're going with grind number two, and that's just going to help ensure that if there were any connective tissues or anything like that, that they will be broken up quite a bit more. Also, just to help blend this a little bit. We are now at the phase here where we need to mix in a bunch of the ingredients and really mix that meat well. You can certainly do that by hand. Lord knows we've done that in the past a lot, haven't we?
Oh,
right? And it's often very, very cold on our little fingies here. So fortunately, I've got this hack and meat mixer here. I love this. I picked this up this year, and it has made this whole process quite a bit easier. So first of all, we're going to dump in our meat. This particular mixer, kind of the minimum that you can get in there and still have it work properly, is about 7 pounds. We are definitely over that here. Now, a word about the recipe, which is all going to be in the video description here, is we're doing it by percentages, okay? First of all, two things, grams and percentages, okay? First of all, we're going with percentages on this because as long as you know your meat weight, you can scale this for any size of recipe very, very easily. And actually the base that we're using for that is the elk meat, because that for some people is maybe the hardest thing to get your hands on. So once you know that elk meat, then you just double that because of the pork. Then everything else is a percentage of that weight. And we're going with grams because why?
They're better.
Yeah, well,
They're just better.
Math. It works so much easier.
Base 10, folks.
Yeah, exactly. So if you get yourself a good scale, it goes to a tenth of a gram. 100 is even nicer, but and then it's incredibly, incredibly simple. So we've got our meat in here, and we're going to start to add our ingredients. All right, so this is our cure number one. This is a sodium nitrite, the quicker acting of the cures. And we're going with 0.25 right there. This is NitriCure, is this particular brand. That's also why it's not pink, okay? If you've got Prague Powder or the pink curing salts, whatever, follow the manufacturer's instructions for you. For us, it's 0.25% of that sodium nitrite cure. Okay, so we have 0.7% of, this is called Fermento. This is a product here that has the sodium erythorbate as well as the dextrose in it. If you're not using something like that, and if I was out of this, I'm honestly just using this to burn through it, we would be adding sodium erythorbate and the dextrose separately, and they would be, what's a percentage of that?
0.05% of the sodium erythorbate and 0.5% of dextrose.
So that's what we'd be going with otherwise. However, we've got this, in she goes. Now we get to mix it. And here we are. So you can see this is why you would not want to have much less than this in here. Still have it mix. Just going to mix this for about a minute before we add our next ingredients. All right, so we're ready for our next ingredient, which is the starter culture. Now, with the particular one that we've got here, this is 0.05% of the culture, and it's been dissolved in 0.5% of distilled water. We're going to be adding it here. This one is Mondo Start
SP.
Mondo Start SP, and that is sort of a quicker acting culture. That'll hopefully reduce the amount of time that we need to have this fermenting. Okay, so we've mixed that for another couple of minutes, and we're going to start adding, so we've got our kosher salt.
2.3%.
Nice. Put that in there. That's a lot of salt. We've got our garlic powder.
That's 0.05%.
Not a lot of that. And then we've got some black peppercorns here. We did bust them up a little bit just to help provide a little bit, maybe better distribution throughout the salami, just because it wasn't a whole lot. And our percentage on that?
0.25%.
Sick. Okay, and now we mix again. After another couple of minutes, and if you are doing this by hand, I would still recommend giving it a good mix in between all of these. We are wanting to hopefully get it nicely bound together. But now we've got our dried cherries, and we've got, what did we say?
5%.
5% of those. Amazing. And then we've got our bourbon. And we've got, what was that?
2.5%.
Sweet. All right, now we need to look out the bowl. And the mixing continues. All right, now after that sweet mixing, we're just going to remove this from the mixer. Gotta love that tilt feature on this. So we put this meat back in the freezer for just a little bit to cool it down, and we're ready for the third grind. All right, so for the next step, we're going to be stuffing the salamis. We're going to be doing that using my Hakka meat stuffer here. It works really sweet. I mean, it is possible to certainly do this by hand as long as you've got like the funnel. It's just way more work, so I'm really glad I've got this. Now, essentially, all we're going to do here is just load this up as much as possible. Should be able to get the full batch into here. And then we can begin to stuff. All right, we managed to fit it's basically 10 pounds of meat into that stuffer, just barely, and we're ready to rip. We're using these 50 millimeter and 61 centimeter long casings here, which will hold roughly a couple of pounds per, assuming I can get it open. There we are. We do have this lubed up a little bit here just with some olive oil, which will hopefully make everything even just a little bit easier. Let the games begin. Just carefully doing that. I like to kind of flop these around a little bit here to hopefully get it to pack just a little bit tighter. And that's good right there. Now that we've got this mainly stuffed, I haven't clipped this yet, but I've got my sausage prickers here. We're just going to give this some little pokes here, which will hopefully allow any air that's in there to also escape. But then as this is shrinking here, as everything dries, it should just fit to it a little bit better. Then to close it up, we're going to use some hog rings with these hog ring pliers, just because that's a really, really effective way to have this clamped up. And now we just repeat with the rest. All right, so here we are. We wound up with almost 5 of these beautiful salamis here. Now we want them to ferment. So the easiest method that we found for that is to actually just take them and wrap them in plastic wrap here, because you need them in a high humidity environment. And rather than getting my curing chamber set up at a super high humidity, which can really wind up causing some potential mold growth issues down the road, if we just keep them wrapped in this plastic like this, that's going to retain the humidity inside here. That'll be perfect. Then all we have to do is worry about the temperature of the chamber. Now we are spritzing this plastic wrap with just a little bit of vinegar here, just to kind of help prevent any sort of unwanted mold growth during that phase where we're sitting at that warmer temperature. We're just going to get these all wrapped up and downstairs. Now we have the curing chamber set up here at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which will be a great temperature for fermenting the salami. And now we're just going to lay them here on a shelf and let them do their thing. It'll probably take a few days. Your target here is to get them below a pH of 5.3, and we should be able to hit that within 2 to 3 days, and then we'll be good. After 3 days of fermenting in the curing chamber here at that 80 degrees Fahrenheit, this elk, bourbon, and cherry salami has finished fermenting, and we're going to get it out and deal with it. Here we have our elk, bourbon, and dried cherry salami. I've actually turned my homebrew bar here into a little bit of a salami processing station. You can see I've got a couple other types of salami that I've already done this with, all ready to go. Now, the process here is pretty simple, especially when you have a little assembly line set up. First step is to just take one of these dripping wet salamis. We're just going to get a pre-hanging weight, which in this case is 954 grams. And then going to just pop it back over here quickly. And then just with some vinegar in a spray bottle here, going to give this all a light spritz down. Now the reason for that is just to kind of reset the situation here. I have had a couple of times here when you're talking about fermenting in the curing chamber. It's a warm temperature, you've got really high humidity, and sometimes some adverse mold wants to kind of take off. This should help prevent that from happening. Now I'm just going to get this set over here. We're going to get a label that has our original weight, the target weight, as well as the actual product, just so I don't confuse these salamis. Now that I have all of these elk salamis here prepped up, just before I hang them, I'm going to give them another spritz down, and this is with some potassium sorbate, and that's going to hopefully help prevent any adverse mold growth on here. I know some people like to spray down their charcuterie with different molds and whatnot. I have found that has not always been terribly reliable. Also, it then is just something else I need to clean off prior to packaging, because when I vacuum seal these afterwards, if I have mold in there, it's going to become a slimy mess. I'm just going to do it like this. Now this is a 3% potassium sorbate solution, so I had 200 grams total. It was 194 of distilled water and 6 grams of potassium sorbate to mix up in here, and that should then help just control potential mold growth. I'm going to give it a little spray down here, like that, and we are ready to hang in the curing chamber. Now I've got the chamber all set up. I've got this, just using a stainless hook. I actually had these in a little bit of vinegar. Again, just always cognizant of the potential for mold. I'm going to hang it just like that and repeat with the rest. And here we are with the elk salami hanging in here. I have the curing chamber here set at 53 degrees Fahrenheit for temperature and 72% relative humidity. And as you can see right now, we're still just trying to balance out a little bit here. That salami was warmer than that temperature, so that's heated it up a little bit, but this curing chamber will cool that down here shortly. Also, our humidity is rather high just because we have all of that salami in there right now that's already leaching moisture, but the fan system that we've got will be able to lower that here soon. Ooh, take a look at some of that mold that has taken place here. We've got some white mold that's happened here. This is even without inoculating. That's super cool. Now, after 1 month here, some of these elk, cherry, and bourbon salamis are at weight, so I'm going to get those out and cleaned up. Here we are with these elk salamis. All of these came in at just around 40% weight loss here, which is actually going to be perfect for these salamis. Now, I do want to get these packaged up and vacuum sealed so we can let them equalize. And I'm also going to do that in the same size of portions that I want to have them in. So just taking a peek here at the inside of this. It is actually fairly even throughout, which is fantastic. However, there is some slight darkening around the perimeter on the inside here. So that's how this equalization process will help. Now I've cut each of these salamis into thirds. I'm going to vacuum seal them in these pre-made bags. And I'll also label them here with the product as well as the date for when I got these into my fridge. These should take probably about a week to equalize, and they'll be ready to slice into. After letting the salami equalize here, it's the most exciting part, which is slicing and tasting. Now checking out this end part of the cut here, other than the fact that this is a little bit rippled just from the vacuum bag, you can see that that looks really quite even. That's awesome. Now this could be sliced by hand using just a really nice sharp knife, but of course I've got this meat slicer here. This is my Avantco, and I'm going to use that to slice it up. Just a really nice thickness. This is how I like it here. You can see that we've got some of the pepper, some of the dried cherry in there. Of course, it's just sort of that slightly darker, heading a little bit towards purple color there with that elk meat. Let's have a taste. Let's do it. This is an incredibly rich and delicious salami. There's a lot of tartness coming through there. We had the pH drop in the acidity happening with that fermentation. There is just a little bit of tartness coming through from those dried cherries that'll be in there. The salinity of it, the salt that we put in, is just perfect in balance with everything. We've got just a little bit of the garlic and some black pepper character coming through here. Now, as far as the bourbon goes, I mean, it's not like we dumped a whole bottle in there or anything, so this certainly isn't screaming bourbon, but there's just this sort of je ne sais quoi that I swear is coming out of that through here. I mean, even if you just tell people this is an elk bourbon and cherry salami, people will be like, I taste the bourbon. I think it's really, really great, and pairing well with the wild flavor of that elk. Now, I know that is sort of a more mild meat when it comes to some of the wild game, but it's just got this like richness to it, and it just plays so well in a salami. This is freaking delicious. Yeah, I'm gonna have some more here. So there you have it. If you're into making salami or you just want to try it for the first time, highly recommend giving this a whirl. If you can get your hands on some elk, you could also try some moose or something like that. If you can't get your hands on elk, honestly, I think venison even would play quite nicely with this here. It's also cool that it's not a common type of salami that you would find in your local butcher necessarily, or especially not in the grocery stores. So it has that added edge of just being something different. All right, if you give this a whirl, please let me know how you like it and how it turned out for you. And until next time, keep your salami and your meat and your wild game and all those fun things at 11.